Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the 8-Bit Adventures podcast. I am your host, Sean Hayes, and with me is my wonderful co-host, as always, Courtney Bolin.
Hey, everybody.
So, big week this week. It is Spooky Week 2021. It's not Halloween. That would have actually made sense for the release of Van Richten's Guide to Ravenloft.
No, but see, they want people to be able to play it, and so you gotta have some time to be able to set up these games.
That hasn't stopped Wizards before. Since they
Fair.
put out Unearthed Arcanas and then expect people to, like, actually play that stuff in a month and then report back on actual playtest thoughts regarding it.
Fair.
And the problem is they release it without warning. So it's like,
Yeah.
if you knew something was coming out, you could be like, okay, so we'll play. We know Unearthed Arcana is going to come. It'll drop. There'll be new stuff. We'll plan for like a one shot. We'll do this stuff. But yeah, you know, you can't just drop something without warning. Expect people to drop everything that they're doing. Play that stuff for a month or 2 weeks even. Sometimes the surveys come out like 2 weeks after it. And it's like, guys, it's not even on D&D Beyond yet. Like, I can't report back on it.
Fast.
But no, I think there was a missed opportunity in this coming out in May and not October.
Yeah.
But who knows? So that is going to be our deep dive this week. We're gonna dive headlong into this book, and you know, kind of get our thoughts on it. I think overall it's a decent book. I think for most of the D&D community, it might not have been what they were looking for. And I'll explain what I mean by that later. So,
Yeah.
But first, do we want to get through our quickfire news?
Yes.
Okay. Courtney, would you like to start us off?
Yeah, so you will no longer be able to get your Pokemon cards or sports trading cards at Target. The retailer will no longer be selling them due to violence and theft. Violence?
Yeah, somebody pulled a
Question
gun
mark?
at Target to get Pokemon cards.
Okay. All right.
Specifically for reselling. Like, that's what the issue is that and they don't know if it's sparked by like job losses or what, but like the secondary market for trading cards has exploded.
Yeah.
And so, like, particularly rare cards, it's people are getting absurd amounts of money for them. And so this is like creating a frenzy. And because, you know, it's 2021, you know, people are threatening Target employees and, you know, like committing grand theft. I say grand theft unironically, or pulling weapons, and specifically firearms in the store.
Come on, folks. It's trading cards. I mean, I
It's,
get it.
it's
too,
not good.
But no, I don't.
So Target put out that
Yeah.
official statement. It's pulling. All the headlines were talking about Pokemon cards specifically, but they also mentioned that this is happening with like baseball cards.
Yep.
Who knew that people were still collecting sports trading cards in 2021? So
Yep, they're still doing it.
yeah.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Next up, Dave Bautista likely will not return to the MCU after Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3, officially citing, in his own words, I'm old. I'm old. Drax isn't going to look good. He said, I'm 54 years old and Drax isn't going to look good. But there were a couple of other articles citing that he was a little disappointed and frustrated with the sort of lack of character development with Drax, and that he's kind of been relegated to like comedic backup, um, which I think that's difficult to do with, when your character is in a property that was an ensemble cast from the get-go. Um,
Yeah.
but I mean, we also saw that a little bit with Guardians too. Um, that and I think we remarked on that when we did our review of it, is that they
Yeah.
kind of seem to just lean into uh Drax being comedic. Often to the it was a little discordant. Uh
Yes, I do remember vaguely of us having a discussion like that.
like there were times when they did it right, like the ever popular the stealth scene where he's just standing still
Yeah.
because he's serious about it and like he's being earnest about it. But I mean, there's also time, when he's like just laughing over the top about and being silly about things. Um,
Yeah.
because you're supposed to take Drax literally, it's like I don't know. They've already established that he doesn't get metaphors, so
Yeah, so it's kind of
yeah,
difficult when yeah.
yeah. Um, so yeah, but it's the MCU, so who knows? They might offer him a boatload of money. They may recast the character. James Gunn
Yeah.
seems to be against recasting the character, at least for now. Then again, there's
Good.
also currently no plans to do any Guardians movies after Guardians Volume 3, since that's already looking like 2 years ahead. So,
Yeah.
who knows?
Um,
Do you want me to
so
take this next one?
next up, WB Games. So the company will be broken up due to AT&T spinning off WarnerMedia, which is going to merge with Discovery. So WB Games includes TT Games, so the Lego things, Rocksteady Studios, which does Batman Arkham, NetherRealm Studios, which is Mortal Kombat, Avalanche Software, which does Hogwarts Legacy, and a bunch more. Um, but so they will be becoming, they'll be breaking up a bit with that, which is all these mergers and acquisitions. It's keeping everything straight
Yeah,
about who belongs where and what is where. um,
yeah. Um,
yeah, so that'll be that merger and breakdown will be happening soon.
yeah, that was kind of a big bombshell this week. Of just the fact that Warner Media is being spun off. Uh,
Yeah,
because that's a big company. And so as part of that, and nobody really knows where these individual companies are going to end up. So that's
yep.
the other thing is like they'll end up somewhere, but they don't know where yet. Um, so
As
uh,
as usually happens when there is a merger or a breakup, which side of this are we gonna all land on?
yeah, well, it's the fact that like it's that they're even breaking it up at all,
Yeah,
right? Which is happening. So it's kind of two pieces of news here: is that it's spinning off Warner
yeah,
Media to merge with Discovery Networks, and then it's
yeah,
also WB Games is being spun off of Warner Media and then broken up, uh, and where those individual studios like Rocksteady may stay with Warner Media and NetherRealm maybe because they have a like those games have a lot of tie-ins with
yeah,
existing Warner properties, um, or are just straight up Warner properties.
yeah,
Um, then again, I mean, all the examples that we gave have tie-ins. I mean, TT Games because it's Lego, they may just go somewhere else because they just have tie-ins with everybody. Who knows? Uh,
I was gonna say, yeah, Lego does a bit. Lego has their hands in every single pot.
yeah,
At least I feel that way,
yeah,
which is not a bad thing for Lego to be doing that. More power to them, please.
yeah. Um,
But
so up next, so Nintendo announced there's going to be a new Skyward Sword Amiibo. This is Zelda and her Loftwing.
Mm-hmm.
So sort of like the combination ones of like Wolf Link and Midna, or sort of Breath of the Wild Link riding a horse. This is like a combination one, so it's all going to be one amiibo. It looks really good, causing a little bit of a controversy in that the feature is a unique feature where it will allow, regardless of where you are in the world, will let you teleport back to Skyloft, and then if you use it again, will teleport you back to where you were.
Oh, that's really
And the
cool.
controversy is folks are saying that this should be a feature that's just included in the game. Why is it, again, paid DLC, blah, 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 for quality of life adjustments and everything. So, um, so my question is,
Mm-hmm.
uh, in order to get into whether this is damaging to the customer, right? Whether this is an anti-customer policy, we have to ask ourselves, number one, uh, so if you're a person that wants to take that stance,
Yeah.
before you knew of this functionality, were you going to get Skyward Sword, the Skyward Sword remake, and were you
Yep.
going to get this amiibo?
I think that's a
Because if
good
the answer
question
to
because
either of
if
those
the
questions
answer
is no,
Mhm.
like especially if the answer, if you weren't going to get Skyward Sword anyway, this whole point is moot.
Yeah.
uh
It's like it's one thing for like, if you're gonna get it and I'm gonna be like, "Hey, yo, it's your birthday. Do you want it?"
yeah,
Like, I'll pre-order you one.
people are thinking like this is going to be a must-have for speedrunners, maybe. um but at the same time, it doesn't let you fast travel anywhere. It just basically lets you fast travel back to Skyloft to buy stuff or sell stuff and then head back down, like right where you left off.
Yeah.
Allegedly, again. Uh, and if that's the case, then I mean, there are many things that I don't wrap my head around for speedrunning, but unless there's some glitch that you can do, uh, it might not actually help all that much. Um,
Mhm.
Also, if it becomes a must-have for speedrunning, that's a niche that you know
Yeah, you're not
you
gonna you're
can't
not gonna
necessarily argue anti-consumer policies if it only affects a very small minority of consumers. Um,
Yeah.
I think it's supposed
It's
to be like a $16 amiibo, um, which isn't super expensive. Um, if it's I could see it being more, maybe.
if it's a bigger one, I could see it maybe being up to 25.
Yeah.
Like, that's, I think, the most expensive amiibo that I've seen.
But that was the
Most of
Guardian. I
them are
don't think it's gonna
usually
be as big.
around.
And it
Yeah.
doesn't have like articulated joints like the Guardian one does.
Yeah.
It's a solid
Yeah.
figure. Um,
Oh, a solid figure? Yeah, 17
yeah.
bucks, you know.
Um, so really, the big thing is if you can get one, because it's Zelda and because it'll be popular. Um,
Yeah.
so
Check your
I
local
don't know.
GameStop, they can probably pre-order you one.
Um, and I mean the question. So if the answer to both of those questions was yes, you were going to get it anyway. Um, I mean, you were going to get it anyway, like regardless of what the feature was. So, I guess the question, if you were going to get the game and not get the amiibo, uh, is whether you feel like you have to purchase the amiibo now to unlock that quality of life adjustment. um, that said, I think Skyward Sword has enough of a notoriety of it that if you were going to get it, I mean, you were willing to put up with the
Everything
tedium
else that is
for
happening with that, yeah.
fast traveling, as is, and also possibly all the weird stuff they're doing to accommodate non-motion controls. Um, so I don't know. Um,
Yeah, it's one of those, if you were gonna get it, you were I personally don't see an amiibo with that specific, like, it brings you one place and back to where you were.
Yeah. I mean, it also brings up the question of like, of the two camps of we want Amiibo to be relevant, but then when Amiibos are made relevant, people complain that they're then mandatory, and I feel like it's it's a conundrum of extremes where
Well,
just because
the
something is available now suddenly it becomes mandatory, and it's like, well, no, that's
yeah,
not
that's
necessarily that you can still play the game as it was originally designed, sort of.
it's
Uh,
it is still enjoyable in the way that it is being released without any add-ons. I
yeah,
think is a way to put it. You know,
yeah.
it is not a game this kind of quality of life improvement addition is something that is extra. It is not necessary words. I can speak them, I swear. It is not necessary to facilitate enjoying the game. Excuse me. It's not necessary to enjoy the game. It's not necessary to be able to complete the game. It's just an added thing, which
Well,
I'm
and it also
okay
becomes a
with.
case of I don't know if it's just like a minor quality of life adjustment or how major it's going to be. Like if it basically brings you back to town so that you can do shopping, uh it might be a nice minor thing, but like ultimately not game breaking.
Yeah.
Um but I mean this also just goes back to people complaining about the Breath of the Wild ones where there was a specific one that got you Epona, and that was like the only way to get Epona, and people were all up in arms about that.
I
So
don't
I don't
know.
know.
I don't know. I the only amiibos that are in my house are Joe's. So, just because I just don't play I do not play with them, and the games that I play, I do not um I don't need them to be able to play the games that I play.
Yeah.
So,
All right. Last up on the list, we already talked about it, but Van Richten's Guide to Ravenloft is out right now.
yeah, it is.
So, and since that wraps up our quickfire news for the week, let's just talk about it, shall we?
Yes.
Blee blee. Uh, so yeah, Van Richten's Guide to Ravenloft. Um,
Mhm.
why don't we start things off here with the thing that I alluded to before, which was I don't know if this book is going to be what most D&D folks in the community were hoping for from a Ravenloft book, which
Yeah.
I think was going to be impossible to deliver. So with most setting books or most books that like most player campaign guides and stuff,
Yep.
there's kind of been a precedent for like about half of it is like, campaign lore, like, excuse me, setting lore and locations and factions and stuff like that,
Uh-huh.
which is quote unquote fluff. Um, and the other half is crunchy stuff like classes, subclasses, campaign specific
Mhm.
feats, materials, lineages and races and stuff, magic items, monsters. Um, and it's been a pretty good split between that. Um, so Van Richten's Guide to Ravenloft has a much heavier focus on the lore and sort of how to properly run uh a horror adventure and
Nice.
tools for doing that.
Mhm.
As opposed to like, oh, here's some spooky subclasses, and here's some spooky spells and spooky magic items. Like there are a scant few magic items that appear in the book. Um, the section of monsters is a little short. Not much shorter than other campaign guides. Um,
Yeah.
two subclasses, and then the three lineages that they presented in the Gothic lineages UA, um,
Yep.
and dark gifts that you can get from the dark power, or for something that happens to your character.
Yep.
And of those, they present like maybe 4 or 5 options. The rest of the stuff is talking about, there's a whole chapter on like safety tools and guidelines for running a game, a game based on fear.
Which I'm very happy to hear.
Yeah, they really, in the entry chapters as well, they really hammer home the point of that it is a game in which your characters are meant to be afraid. It is not a game in which your players are meant to be afraid. And that's what makes like horror films and literature so engaging, is that it creates suspense and it creates fear and it creates dread. But at the end of the day, the audience knows that
You
it's
can
a
step
work of
away from the
fiction.
movie, you can close the book and put it away,
Yes.
you can turn off the TV show, you are still within
Yeah.
your body to
So,
do what you need
so
to.
basically, it's, do not, use this as an opportunity to attack your players, because that betrays the trust of the game and the trust of the group. Um,
Mhm.
and is all around a terrible thing to do. So don't do it, folks. Uh,
Yeah.
so, um, most of the book is detailing the domains of dread. Uh,
Yeah.
Now, I don't know if most people who were, they heard Ravenloft book are thinking that this would have just been like a campaign guide to Barovia and fully fleshed out everything. Um, I knew, uh, because I have known about Ravenloft for a while, that Ravenloft is a bit of a hodgepodge. Ravenloft is not one place. It is
Well,
a
and as we talked
collection of
about when
places.
we yeah, and as we talked about when we went through the table of contents a couple of weeks ago, there is Barovia, but then there's so many other
Yeah,
different domains, and so knowing, like the Carnival domain of Dread, like that's not,
that one's actually pretty cool. And well, we can talk about that one in a little bit. But yeah, they kind of give you a bit fleshing out of like 15 or so domains. Oh, we lost Courtney. We talked about the carnival, and she noped out. Uh,
Yeah. 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 My computer, even my internet connection says no, Courtney
yeah,
doesn't want to talk about
yeah.
the creepy carnival.
So so they kind of
But I
do a
remember
little
you
bit more
saying
fleshing
it
out on
didn't
15 or
have
so
like
domains. And then they mention and do like basically a one paragraph hook on like another 15 or 16 or so. Um
yeah.
and I mean, it's you're not going to get, like the level of detail that you get for Eberron or the Forgotten Realms that you are
Hmm.
for Ravenloft in one book. Like you would have to do a book for every domain. And kind of the issue is Barovia is the only one that really gets fully fleshed out, because that's the one that everybody thinks of when they think Ravenloft. When there's a whole bunch of other stuff there. Um, so why don't we talk about that stuff? Because like, admit there's not really a lot else aside from the monsters. I mean, aside from the lineages, they're pretty close to what was in the UA. They did away with the dual creature types, which I'm a little sad about, because that was like a really unique thing, and instead just like
Okay.
gave features that are like undead traits, construct traits, uh,
Okay.
that like we've already seen on Warforged. Like,
Yeah.
and regardless of being undead or construct, like it's the same thing. It's like resistance to poison and being poisoned, uh, advantage on death saves. You don't need to breathe. You don't need to sleep. You don't need to eat or drink.
Hmm.
You know. Um. So yeah, let's talk about these. So Courtney, are there any domains in particular that you would like to talk about aside from the carnival?
No, it was really just like confronting that fear straight on, kind of.
Oh, okay. All right. So the
Um,
carnival. Let me find it. Oh, I think I passed it. The carnival. So
because I remember you
the
saying that it
carnival.
doesn't have a creepy clown as the thing.
Well, it does have a clown. Level of creepiness is subjective. Uh, but the clown is not the Dark Lord. The Dark Lord
That's
is the
what I
leader of the
yeah.
carnival. The domain itself is the carnival, and like a carnival, it wanders. So it's actually a domain of dread that wanders through other domains of dread, and that's something that you see a bit that they do uh, with this book, is that you see a couple of like smaller domains of dread, and domains of dread, they can be, you know, as large as like, you know, a state or a small country, but they could be as small as like a singular building.
Yeah.
Because these are all demi-planes. You know, they're not sort of fully fleshed out planes. And they're also uh they call out right in the beginning, these are pockets within the Shadowfell, which I
Mhm.
thought was interesting. That's a callback to how it worked in 4E. I don't recall how they did it in third edition and second edition. If it was like attached to the plane of shadow or not, or if it was somewhere else entirely. Um, they also call it to specify certain magic does not work.
Just
Right?
straight up will not work.
Planar magic does not work.
So no banish,
So yeah,
no.
banish does not work because you can't
Yep.
send something out. Plane shift doesn't work. Um,
Mhm.
I think they said like contact other plane, or things that contact other extraplanar entities. Um,
Mhm.
does work. However, there is a chance that the Dark Lord takes notice and can just like redirect it to themselves.
Oh, so it's kind of like incoming phone call. Okay, I'm going to intercept that.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay,
Um,
cool. All right,
you know,
that's a thing.
if I were running a game, I would say plane shift just works like teleport, because teleport does work. Um, let's see. So extraplanar spaces that you access from your current plane of existence, like Rope Trick, Magnificent Mansion,
Yep.
those do work.
Okay.
However, you are still treated as being in Ravenloft in the extra dimensional space.
Okay.
So you can't like think, "Oh, I'm going to bypass this by jumping into a rope trick and then plane shifting out of the rope trick."
Oh, okay. All
Right?
right. All right.
So,
Okay, I get
yeah,
it.
that doesn't work. Um
Okay.
but anyway, to get back to the carnival. So the
Yeah.
carnival kind of has like two parts to it. Uh the first part is the carnival itself. Now, the carnival itself, I mean, there's not actually a whole lot that's like particularly wrong or evil or amoral about it. Like the carnival shows up, you know, it's got all sort of circus acts. Everybody loves the carnival. Um,
Mhm.
there is, excuse me, a clown that is part of the um, sideshow. That is one of the main sideshows. The clown is simply known as the organ grinder. Now, this is not like I'm gonna grind up your
No,
insides.
no,
No.
no. Organ grinder like monkey and organ grinder. Those guys are creepy.
Uh, so this clown does not talk and is a somber clown. So, you know, just, you know, hangs out and grinds the organ. Is attended by a group of mischievous, half-trained, not quite identifiable animals that caper around to the music.
Not
Uh,
quite identifiable. Oh, I love that word,
the
those
clown never
words.
speaks, but allows visitors to guess the animal's nature for a copper piece.
Okay. I mean, organ grinders are creepy too, but that's because the music they play is haunting and it makes sense for that to be in the domain of dread. Um,
There's also juggling daredevil, a dancer and animal tamer who performs with a collection of rare serpents. Um, an acrobat who has leathery wings that allow her to fly. Um, a quick-tongued rapper and dancer who turns into a rabbit on nights of the full moon.
Were Rabbit?
Yes.
Okay, now I'm just imagining Monty Python and the Holy Grail.
Um, and the carnival barker poses themselves as the amazing soulless man. Is that he casts no reflection and claims to lack a soul,
Okay.
but not a vampire. Just has no reflection. so, so things like that. Nothing inherently like very spooky. I mean the clown might be off-putting to some, but
It's
like
it's 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 off-putting though. It's not like creepy.
yeah, there's nothing
Like
about it that So unless it's what your DM decides, like there's nothing canonically in the book that is like at the stroke of midnight when everyone's asleep, the clown goes out and starts like taking I don't know people's shoes or something. Like
yeah,
he climbs
yeah.
into your under your bed and steals your socks or whatever. No,
Mhm.
uh, I don't know. There's the Hall of Horrors. So this is where one of the spooky elements actually does come in. Is basically there's an academic that runs the Hall of Horrors, and so this is going to be spoilery. I should point that out before we continue, and I'll mark the episode thumbnail after the
Yeah.
fact that this will have spoilers. Um, so basically, he's cursed. In that, like his worst impulses sort of grow out from his body like buds, and then pop off as like homunculi that are manifestations of his id. Um, So the Hall of Horrors is he captures these as best as he can and tries to like contain them, um, and touts them as
Okay.
Professor Bacalli's pickled punks.
Okay. I'm okay.
Yeah.
Right.
Every
That's a
once in a
thing that
while, one
exists
escapes, and
now.
that's where sort of chaos ensues. Um, now,
Thing that exists.
now, the truly spooky part is the carnival does not like to stay in one place for too long.
Hmm.
And there's two reasons for that. One is because of the Dark Lord's mission, which is to the Dark Lord is actually like a paladin who runs the carnival, and I think I think she's like a paladin. And basically, like the rest of her adventuring company was utterly destroyed by some fiend, um, and she's just on a quest to destroy the fiend. Um, and so the fiend is constantly eluding her, and so she's trying to track down where the fiend is so that she can destroy it. She was
Okay.
given the carnival from like an archfey, and as part of the bargain, uh, it's if she ever encounters like a a different carnival that she had swapped with to like sort of get out of the bargain, um, they have to swap back. And she
Okay.
doesn't want to do that because she'll be tied to one place.
I
And she
see.
wants to keep searching around for this fiend.
Yep.
Now, the other reason
So that makes sense that she
is
wants to keep it moving.
is the more time the carnival spends in one particular place, is there are eventually mysterious vendors that set up shop outside the carnival. And as more time passes, more vendors show up. And these
Mm-hmm.
vendors are of an unscrupulous nature. Um, that they sell enigmas and talismans, uh, lost memories, love potions.
Selling
Um,
lost memories. That's my question is, do they sell the lost memories for people to lose memories, or do they sell memories that other people have lost? That's
Unclear, because
that's a
these
fun
are
thing for your
seely
DM
or
to
unseelie
decide.
fae that show up.
Hmm?
So these merchants are all Fey traders. And so they're looking to trick, and they're looking to sabotage, and they're looking to ensorcel. Um,
Mm.
and they show up, um, and everything that they sell is dangerous to some degree.
Yeah.
So they're
Yeah.
bad, right? So it's basically the carnival doesn't want them to show up, so they have to keep moving.
Mm, yeah, that sounds about right. Yeah. That's a interesting interesting addition for that. But
So
I'm
yes, I
so
mean, so that's the carnival, basically in a nutshell.
so so correct me if I'm wrong, Sean. So the way that I understand getting to Ravenloft is in general, you're heading somewhere and you head through, say, a misty road or something, and you're just in Ravenloft in one of the domains at that point.
So there are a number of ways that you might end up in Ravenloft.
Yeah.
Um, Generally, there's one of two methods. Is one, you become a Dark Lord, which is you commit several truly heinous acts of villainy and one final act,
Yep.
where you had a chance to redeem yourself and you turned it down and you just gave all in. Um,
Instead of talking the bridezilla down, you doubled down and you decked the wait staff or whatever.
I would have argued this is you're Anakin Skywalker, and
Yeah.
you decide to go fight Obi-Wan Kenobi on Mustafar, because like
Mhm.
that's the final, or it could be argued that the final straw was when he supposedly slaughtered the entire school of children, right?
Yeah,
Um,
killing the younglings, man. Kill those younglings.
like that's the beyond redemption, and then the act in
Mhm.
which he would have died. Um, I don't know. I've
Yeah.
heard some conspiracy theories that like what I mean is if there were younglings that like escaped, because like there's a popular theory that that's what that's again spoilers, that's how Grogu is like just out running around, um
Okay. Yeah.
because if
Okay,
he's
sure.
50 years old, uh that kind of puts him sort of in that time frame that he would have been training somewhere, um maybe.
Possible.
But anyway, yeah. uh so to clarify, Anakin totally did that. It's just we don't know
Yes.
how many of those young like escaped.
So yes, so Anakin would have been turned into a Dark Lord.
Oh, for sure. I
I mean,
mean,
we know that.
100%.
I mean, obviously, but that was his event of
Yeah,
turning him into a Dark Lord.
yeah.
Okay.
And the event in which he would have been whisked away would have been when he was burning on Mustafar. Uh,
Yeah.
so, um, yeah, you can turn into a Dark Lord, in which case you are imprisoned in your own domain of dread,
Mhm.
or it's just the Dark Powers decided it's not your lucky day, and you have been selected for eternal torment.
Okay.
Because, uh, I mean, once you get into Ravenloft, you don't get out. There's another
Yeah.
domain where the whole crux of defying that is the impetus for an apocalypse scenario.
So, I guess my question is with how is when the dark forces that be decide that you're having a bad day and you're gonna go. Um,
Well,
is
so
it
here's the
like
thing. So to clarify, is so the second one where they just pick you, you can
yeah,
be anybody. You don't have to be
yeah,
bad. And in
yeah,
fact, like
no,
it's often a case where
and that's
heroes, yeah,
kind of
like
yeah.
myths just roll in and they take you, and then you just end up somewhere else. There's also another variety of mists which they don't take your body, but your consciousness is implanted into a body that's not yours,
Oh, that's creepy.
and that you're experiencing things as somebody else. That's
Oh
called
man, I
mind
just got a
taker
really
mist.
cool idea.
Um, and they introduced that basically as a way so that like they introduced a couple different ways on how you could run like some Ravenloft one shots and like keep it within a campaign's continuity, but not involve like your characters, so that like, and then when that entity dies, like your consciousness is returned back to your body elsewhere. Um,
It's easier than it was all a dream.
yeah,
It gives a
like it's
reasoning
not a dream
for
because it
why.
happens. Like somebody died, somebody actually
Yeah,
died, but it's also like it's not you.
yeah.
Like you're just seeing it
So
happen.
I guess my
Yeah.
question is, can if a group of adventurers were to find themselves at the carnival, it would more be like a like they keep walking and there's the carnival big top. There's the entrance gate right in front of them. They can't turn around. They have to be in there, or would it be they're already through the gate? I
So,
guess I
hang on.
guess that's my
Let
question
me just
of
double
like
check
if we're
this.
looking at it like an amusement park.
It's
Like I Because I can understand, like, just being somewhere, but I'm having trouble visualizing it, if that makes sense.
um so the carnival's a little weird in that because it travels from place to place.
Yeah, and that's why I was wondering.
It's a little unique in that regard.
Mhm.
Um, because in theory, you can also travel through the mists from one domain to another.
Yeah.
Like you can sometimes do that. Now, traveling through the mists is dangerous for most people, and they have rules for that. The rules are generally that you gain a level of exhaustion per turn. Uh, and you are also beset upon by all sorts of various monsters depending on which domain. Um, but it also says like flyers advertising the carnival's impending arrival appear mysteriously in communities before it arrives. Uh, the carnival doesn't produce these flyers or contribute to their distribution; they just appear. Um,
Okay.
let's see, blah 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 blah.
Yeah, I guess I'm wondering because it's a
So the
carnival,
domain
does it
only
basically
encompasses a few
entice
square
people
hundred
in?
yards.
Mhm.
Um, and the arrangement varies depending on where it gets set up, but it always includes, uh, a thoroughfare of games, food, sideshow stalls, leading from the ticketing gate to the big top. Um, so it's basically, to think about it,
Like a theme park?
no,
No. Okay.
it would be like an area within a theme park. And I mean,
Okay.
and Disney is probably a better example than other theme parks because Disney has very different thematic areas. So
Yep.
it's as if there was, like an area that had one very specific theme that was carnival related.
Yep.
So that like you could see where the border is. Um and that like you can go there.
Mhm.
Um but like it has a very distinct border, but like it also travels from place to place.
Okay, alright, so kinda like Tomorrowland or Fantasyland, like that
Yeah,
the
like it
Disney
exists. So
the Dumbo section of Fantasyland.
so for example, so Carnival goes to Barovia,
Yeah,
right? Where it sets up, that where the carnival is set up is the carnival's domain.
okay,
It's no longer Barovia.
okay.
Um let me just see what happens when. So each Dark Lord also has the ability to close off uh, the domain, which
Okay.
means that you can't travel through the mists into or out of the domain. Um,
Yeah, the carnival's it's a very unique situation of domain.
yeah. So yeah, I mean, it's one of the few ways in which you can safely, quote unquote, travel from one domain of dread to another, since normally like you can't safely do that. Uh,
Yeah.
Dark Lords are exempt. Dark Lords cannot use the carnival as a way to escape their domain of dread.
So you can enter the carnival and escape the carnival, but you can never escape Ravenloft.
Um, Correct.
Okay.
So, well, what it would be is you could enter the carnival in Barovia,
Yep.
travel with the carnival, and exit in Mordant.
Like, okay. That's
So,
that's that's what I was kind of okay, I get it. Yeah. Okay.
um, and
So many.
so when the borders are closed, the mists sort of gather around the carnival area, and it's just filled with eerie, colorful lights, distant music, um, echoing memories of past carnivals.
Okay.
So,
Oh, that sounds terrifying. Bloot Spur sounds terrifying.
Blootspur is great. Blootspur is a
Bloot
place
Spur
where so
is
normally
the
it's got
other
a
one
little
that I would
sidebar
like to talk
section.
about.
Each domain has a sidebar section of how to play as a character from that domain, and they give really great examples of like what are things to think about for your character. Like what are your
Mhm.
passions? What is something that's important to this domain that it relates to your character? But also like what are what's the general demographics and cultural aspects, as well as like if a typical name is inspired by this language. Um, so Barovia, like it's like names are typically of Slavic, inspired by Slavic names, whereas I think it's Morden is names inspired by Celtic and English. Um,
Mhm.
and they do a pretty wide variety. Uh, there's obviously there's I think there's like two Slavic and two German, and like one that like all of the names that are in the book are French, and then one where they actually say that it's French. But the rest of them have like a pretty big mix. Um,
Mhm.
Blootspur is unique in that there are no characters that are from Blootspur.
Yeah.
uh, because Blootspur is an alien landscape that is designed to just kill everybody. It is a toxic alien landscape that houses an underground city of mind flayers that are desperately trying to keep a dying elder brain alive. And the elder brain is is kind of suffering from dementia and coming up with all manner of schemes that are considered profane to mind flayers to keep it alive, such as creating vampire mind flayers, which are
I saw that.
anathemic to illithid society. And it's just like, no, we have to do this. Like, do not question me. We must do it. Creates these vampire mind flayers that are just feeding machines, driven on instinct, and then sends them out to collect cerebrospinal fluid. And when they've engorged themselves in cerebrospinal fluid, come back to the elder brain pool, jump in the pool, and dissolve, releasing the fluid to the elder brain, which like provides some level of comfort, but ultimately does not resolve
Mhm.
the condition.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
yeah,
So
so that it's also punctuated by like um, the whole shtick of that is basically alien abductions.
mhm.
is that because the elder brain has such psychic power and everything, it can direct the mind flayers to extend their tentacles into other domains and just like grab people and suck them into Bluetspur, in which they perform all manner of experiments and then dump them back where they were with a modified memory so that they don't actually remember what happened.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's a way to make the whole alien abduction thing like far scarier than, oh yeah, me and Jim Bob, yeah, me and the cow, we got abducted by aliens and they left a big old crop circle out in a cornfield.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. No, that's even more terrifying.
Oh yeah,
See, it's but this is why I wanted to talk about it because alien stuff is also one of my also another one that just makes me feel a little uncomfortable.
yeah.
Um,
So and that's one where they do the cosmic horror thing for that setting, or for that
yeah.
domain, because it shows you what else is out there in the multiverse. Because
Mhm.
this, like, the whole thing with the lithids is that they are not from the far realm like other aberrations are, like beholders and aboleths and stuff.
Mhm.
They're from the future? Question mark? Where they had a multiverse spanning empire, and to avoid its destruction, activated a time machine and threw themselves into the past far before their empire began. And so current day mind flayers are trying to set the groundwork to uh
To basically make it so that they can
to
eventually have the
recreate
society
their
to
multiverse spanning empire that they
Mhm.
believe is fated to happen, and therefore like they're utterly patient and sort of that thing.
So it would kind of be like if one of us went back to I'm just going to say like ancient Greece. Like and to start to set up. I mean, obviously I know they're even way further back in the past, but to try and set up things so that things can actually spread and become the empire.
Sort of. I mean, except we're talking on like a Doctor Who time scale.
No, 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 that's what I said. I
Yeah.
understand that we're talking a much, 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 much
But
larger
also if
time
we're talking
scale.
about generally the typical how mind flayers are typically portrayed, it would be like, you know, a modern day American going back in time to instill the idea of manifest destiny to uh the current
Mhm.
leadership at the time, which as we
Yeah.
all know is horrible, and led to many atrocities, which is kind of, mind flayers going back in time to, basically enslave and eat the brains of people, of humanoids, in order to expand and further their empire. uh yeah, yeah. So but yeah,
Mhm.
yeah, Bluetspur, not a fun place. It's also a place where you likely won't be there for very long because, like, it's often you're just like experimented on and then you're dumped, like back to someplace wherever you were.
So
The
that's the
question
other
is,
thing
the
is
question is, how are you changed?
so that's the
Um,
question though is so with that one specifically, you do leave Ravenloft.
no, typically you're dumped, so you are taken from another domain of dread,
Okay,
or you
that was
could be
gonna
taken from outside of Ravenloft, but you are dumped in
Mhm.
another domain of dread.
Okay, that was
Oh, we lost Courtney again. Yep. Uh, so yeah, Bluetspur.
okay. Yep, that was fun.
Yeah. Um,
So it doesn't dump you outside of Ravenloft. You stay within Ravenloft and it dumps you in another domain though. Similar
Typically
to
it
how
dumps
you
you in another
can
domain. Yeah.
yeah, similar to how you can leave the carnival by going to another domain.
Yeah.
Okay.
Um,
Like, because the only way out of any of the domains or Ravenloft in general is in a body bag.
uh, Well,
And
no,
even then,
not
not
always.
always. As I say, and
uh,
even then, not always. Because I know that there's some.
in Mordant, for example, when you die,
Mhm.
your ghost uh, then becomes bound to the Dark Lord, who is also a ghost. He controls all of the spirits in Mordant. So everybody
Because
that
of course he
dies
does.
then becomes sort of mentally ensorcelled by Wilfred Godfrey. Godfroy. It's Godfroy. So yeah. Uh, Richemouleau, I think, is another interesting one. That's the one that in our sort of Tales of Jamora chat I posted about, where it's basically Vermintide but in France.
Ah, that one. Okay.
Um,
Yep.
yeah, so it's basically a disaster scenario. Um, I know for a lot of people, they probably might not want to play that scenario for a while since it all hinges around a plague. Uh, and like it has stages of like quarantine and having to avoid people because because this plague is transferred by physical contact. Um, but
Really, tell me more about this plague of which I have no idea how anything like that could ever happen.
so
It
again,
seems so
spoilers.
unrealistic
Um,
to ask people to quarantine. What are you talking about?
so the Dark Lord is an aristocrat who she hated the peasantry, climbed her way up to becoming, sort of like a high-ranking aristocrat. Uh, and then um, basically joined a cabal of weir rats, thinking that it was like a secret society of nobles. Turned out that it was just like a secret society of weir rats. And then they were like, hey, why don't, if you hate the common folk so much, why don't we just wipe them all out with diseases? And she was like, that's a great idea. So they basically engineer diseases to wipe everybody out. Because like she wants to rule, but she hates the people she's ruling over. And so they engineer plagues, release on the masses, and then it's like a cycle of, you know, new plague gets released, uh, and then over the course of a month or so, like it progresses, wipes out, it's basically like a bubonic plague over and over and over and over and over again.
Mhm.
Uh, and then it's like this ebb
So
and
that
flow,
mysterious
so that like
sweating
things
sickness
return back
from.
to normal, populations start to rebound again, and she's like, the masses are breeding, we have to create a new plague, and they start all over again. um and because it's were rats, it's just rats everywhere. Like rats are the carriers, there's swarms of rats everywhere. Rats and were rats are immune to it, so you can usually tell who's a were rat by like if essentially they're um people that aren't taking precautions during the plague. They're just
Oh,
like out wandering
gee.
around going like, oh, this is
Okay, no,
wonderful. Oh,
new head canon. People who don't take precautions during a plague are were rats. Got it.
They I mean they have some encounters that you can do during various stages of a plague, of an outbreak. And one of them is like during the last stages is like uh the characters walk by this house where everybody has died, and inside they see it's like a bunch of presumably were rats like in human form, that are like dancing with the corpses and like partying and enjoying themselves and everything, because like everybody's dead. uh like everybody in the household's dead. Like there's no one to contest, like if we're just gonna show up and we're just gonna like take all their stuff and party. And but they're like dancing with corpses and hanging out and having a good time, and weekend at Bernie's the
I was
whole
gonna
thing.
say they are doing weekend at Bernie's.
Oh yeah. um and then there is a police force that like tries to maintain order by like forcibly putting people into quarantine and stuff. That it turns out the police force are just animated suits of armor, uh filled with swarms of rats that animate him.
So instead of just letting tigers loose in the streets, it's getting the rats in metal suits and sending them off to.
They're called the silent police. And so imagine just like officers in riot gear that you can't see their face or anything. They never talk, but they like direct people to like, because I mean early on it'll be like that it's not safe out here, you need to get inside, or if you're sick you need to move to a quarantined area, we are bringing you to a quarantined area, please do not resist, without talking. uh but if they're defeated in combat, like you find out that it's just an empty shell of armor, and all it's just rats spill out, and then you have to fight a swarm of rats. um
Mm, No, no,
uh
no,
and it's also the board. So
no.
when the borders are closed for that one and you try and go into the mists, you are just beset upon by an endless swarm. Oh, lost Courtney again. By an endless swarms of rats.
No, endless. No, thank you. No, I don't need endless swarms of
So
rats.
imagine. So let's imagine the party from Tales of Jamora. So we've got May, we've got Twixen, we've got Jacobin, and we have Seraph, who powerful adventurers in their own right.
Yep.
However, when you are taking 1 point of exhaustion every turn, and there is an endless sea of swarms of rats, meaning like every space that you can see, every as far as the eye can see, is just swarms of rats that are biting and getting at you and everything. Eventually, they are gonna wear you out. Now it gets even better. There's another domain where it's like that, but zombies. That it's basically World War Z. And the Dark Lord is like a general of brutality and bloody victories and everything, that
Yeah.
refuses to retreat, and so is willing to sacrifice every civilian and every soldier under her command in order to acclaim what is an unattainable victory, because on a monthly basis there is a zombie invasion and the zombies just keep coming.
I love whoever was writing some of the flavor text under these pictures, because the picture, and you told me this earlier, Sean, but the picture under the image of about the gnawing plague,
Yes, as
it is
masks may
wearing a mask curtails the plague, but not wear rat.
yep.
Like,
As you can still
I'm
be stabbed.
sorry, but I almost want that on a shirt.
It has been requested quite a bit as a shirt slogan.
Especially with like a bandana to be able to wear as a mask, um, that has like a rat image,
Yeah,
with like the circle and
yeah.
the line through it. Um,
Um, so some other ones that I wanted to mention, because
yeah.
we are kind of running out of time. But let's see, Carticas, um, Ekath, I think is how it's pronounced. Um, and Valachan. Um, I
Balkan.
believe were 3 domains in which like so I'm pretty sure Wizards actually like got a whole bunch of freelance writers to come up with domains and write domains and adventures and stuff. Um, so those specifically, I believe they actually reached out to um uh by POC writers
Okay.
and cultural consultants in order to
Oh
come up with those
no.
domains. Um, so maybe it's Echan, um, is or Ekath, um, very influenced by it's influenced by Chinese culture, and it's sort of like a duality of like dream world, real world.
Yeah,
um
I like that they have in each of them like the Dark Lord and then the genre
yes,
and the hallmarks.
yeah, it's
Like,
to give you
that's
an
something that I
overview of
kinda
like
like, so, like,
what are the
you
key
can know
takeaways.
that, like, Ekath is body horror and cosmic horror.
Yeah,
Like,
so the body horror is not entirely what you think, in that the body horror stems from the fact that when you first arrive, it's like there's we'll say there's bodies everywhere,
Let the bodies hit the
but they're
floor.
asleep.
Let the bodies hit the
It's
floor.
everybody's
Yep.
asleep, and everybody stays asleep because the Dark Lord keeps people asleep to work on this dream version of the city in their dreams.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, because it says
Also,
that it
that
is
there's
domain
Zhang
trapped in
Qi
a
that like patrol
dream.
the streets, attacking anybody who's awake.
Yeah. That's that's just yup. Yup. That's there's
Sorry,
I'm
not
gonna say this in
Cardass.
the best way
Calicari.
possible. Mhm.
Calicari is based on Indian. Like it's a domain based on or inspired by India, um, and like two rival factions of siblings that are vying for control. Um, that it's weird in that it's their the person that is currently serving as the Dark Lord is actually a tragic hero
Oh.
that like didn't become a Dark Lord until after the Domain of Dread was formed.
Oh, well, that's kind of sad.
Yeah. So it's an
Yeah.
interesting twist on it where they started out as a tragic figure,
Mhm.
where like they were all set to rule, they did a great job, but her siblings um, conspired against her and um, killed her, and she came like basically like crawling back out and like as a revenant or a shade or something, and like butchered them and like executed them and reassumed the throne, and then began like, and that's when the descent began. Like she started out great again, and then like everything went downhill from there, because
Yeah.
she was essentially a vengeful spirit, um
Yeah.
made manifest, or a vengeful revenant, we'll say, um
Yeah.
and her siblings keep coming back, and so it's like her siblings are kind of more of the Dark Lord, but it's the Dark Lord is whoever's in power, and she's currently in power. um and so the twist is that the she was corrupted by the Domain of Dread
Mhm.
instead of ultimately being imprisoned by it. We also kind of see that with uh, Valachan or Valakan, which is inspired by Mesoamerica, um, where uh, ultimately it's the dangerous game or the most dangerous game, where
Hunting. Okay, got it.
uh, it's the Dark Lord is a huntress who slew the previous Dark Lord. Again, spoilers. Uh, and that it's also a kind of play. It's like the most dangerous game mixed with a little bit of the Lich King in World of Warcraft. Is that if there isn't a Dark Lord of the domain, um, the literal environment, the wilds, the plants and animals, uh, start to lash out and kill every sapient being.
Oh, wow.
Now, for the purposes of this, it's basically humanoids, which, ignoring the idea that like animals may or may not be sapient in and of themselves. Uh, but this is essentially every humanoid would get butchered by the environment. Um,
Oh,
and there are
all right.
and the idea is like, are you willing to destroy this domain and put to death hundreds, possibly thousands of innocent lives in order to say that there is no Dark Lord of this domain anymore? Um, which might be enough to turn you into a Dark Lord of a different domain. So it is when you defeat the Dark Lord, you are presented with that information, and if you're like, well, I can't I can't do that. So then the cycle has to continue. You have to carve out your own heart, eat the heart of the previous one, and then your heart lays at the middle of this like labyrinth and beats. And the heartbeat is basically the rhythm of like the domain itself. Is like that your heartbeat
Some kind
becomes
of Davy Jones like
the heartbeat
situation.
of the domain. A little bit of that too, yeah.
Okay, yeah, that's okay.
And
So,
so, but the most dangerous game is like some sort of sacrifice to appease the domain itself. Is Chakuna selects like 15 people, invites them to her estate and everything, and then says like, I'm going to give, you may stay here for the night, enjoy yourselves, have a nice meal. I would encourage you to leave tomorrow morning. Here are the rules of the game. Is that you can form whatever alliances you want before the game starts. Once the game starts, you can't form alliances. Uh, and here are the other rules and everything. Like you can't leave the domain. Uh, you have to get to one of these shrines. If you do, you win. Uh, but by tomorrow night, I'm coming for you all to kill you and possibly eat
uh-huh.
you.
Yeah, yeah.
And so it's
I
also like Hunger Games too,
yeah, very Hunger Games.
because
This
most
this
dangerous game is like one person. This is like it's also a battle royale.
yeah, like I come this next statement that I am going to make, I understand completely that this is the point of the Ravenloft setting and the domains of dread. None of these interest me to ever play them because they will creep me out too much. And I, as a person, I, as a player, would not be able to differentiate the creepy crawly from game and the creepy crawly from like between character and player.
Yeah,
Like
and that's
I
fine.
and that is
It's if
yep.
so. One thing to note is they do talk about like you write down stuff and you talk about what kind of game that you want to run. And if
Mhm.
any of your players say like I'm not comfortable with that, then you have a discussion and say like, well, then do we run this game? Do I try and find another group to run this game? If you really want to run that type of game, you may need to find a different group to run it for. Or that player may just say like, look, I'm going to sit this one out. But maybe could we do a different game, some other time. Um,
Mhm.
I also forgot Courtney was talking about the carnival and like theme parks and stuff. There's another domain where it's all based on performance and the arts, where one of the towns is like everybody's putting on a performance. Like everybody's playing a role, everybody's trying to impress, like every moment of their lives, they're in character. It is like a discordant
Truman
version
Show.
of Disney World and Disneyland where everybody's a cast member but you are never out of character. Uh and this
So it's
includes
like
like
Truman Show.
a little bit, yeah. Yeah.
Mhm.
But like but like so like if somebody gets murdered, like it's a performance. It's supposed to be a performance. So like it's stage murder kind of a thing. But it's everybody's trying really hard. And so like if you're first arriving in town, like a person, may give you their name, but it's like their role. It's not who they actually
It's
are.
just
Uh
mhm.
and the Dark Lord is so this so I'm gonna warn people this because this has possibly more so than a lot of the other Dark Lords, has a lot of real world connotations to it. So the Dark Lord here is a performer who their torment is like they're always forgotten. And so what he does is he like grooms new talent and then infects them with lycanthropy to get leverage over them. Uh and then like
Because you are
forces them
beholden as a
to
lycanthrope
become
to
bigger
that
and bigger
which
and bigger
cursed
and
you.
then
Yeah.
claim their success as his own. uh and then when he's done with them, like basically says like you're gonna be my minion or I'm gonna let loose all of the other minions in my network upon you. uh Essentially like you will never work in this town again or you will never live in this town again. uh so I say that because like I'm that could basically describe the behavior of a lot of like movie execs and
I'm
producers
like, that's
like
Hollywood.
that has come to
Like
light
that
over
is,
the past 5-10 years. Um,
yeah, that's Hollywood.
yeah.
Hmm.
So yeah, but the fact that the whole domain is crafted around that. Um,
Mm. Yeah, these are definitely, it's interesting though because as we've been talking about them,
yeah,
I've been thinking about like could I enjoy playing in one of these? No way. Absolutely not. That is not something that I would enjoy to play, but I might enjoy a short like 1 to 5 episode or session, like
yeah.
I
Well,
wanna
and I
call it
think
one
here's
shot,
the other
like,
thing.
I could run something like this,
There's
but I
also a
could
difference
enjoy it.
between running a non-horror based game within Ravenloft as a setting and running a horror based game within Ravenloft as a setting. Because like,
Yes.
if it's just taking the Backstreet Sharks and throwing them into one of these things and just letting them go ham, I mean, here's the thing, uh, they'd probably clean house because
Yeah.
the book stresses that a Dark Lord's power isn't in mechanical stats. And that's why many of them are like CR1, CR2 monsters. I mean, Strahd's, you know, uh, uh, an outlier of that. You know, I mean, they talk about one in Borka, which is another domain, where um, she said her stats are based on like a spy, which is CR1 half, right?
Yeah.
This is a suitable challenge for like 2 first level characters. Uh, but it's the uh prestige and the reputation and the um
Influence.
social influence that they have, as well as sort of mastery of the domain that they have, that makes them contentious to deal with. And it's also like they sort of play up the fact that typically like they may not necessarily be in charge of like politically in charge of the domain, but most often they are. So it's like, I mean, you can't just walk into the king's castle and just kill the king. Uh, like you're gonna have to get through basically everybody to get to that point. Um,
Yeah.
because
Yeah,
the king's got
I'm
guards. You
thinking
got to get through
about
all of the king's guards in order to do that.
all the king's horses and all the king's men.
Indeed. Um, and it's often the case where it may quite literally be that. Uh, so,
I've
um,
just again, like knowing how I am with even within these horror settings, like I could probably handle and I probably would enjoy running a few games in these settings with horror elements, but it's a control thing for me. If I know that the bump is coming in the scary, I'm okay with it. And
yeah.
if I can control the bump coming, that's even better. Um, but yeah, it would definitely be a matter of I love you, Sean, but I'm not gonna play in a Ravenloft game.
I mean, I think it might be interesting if we were to do like around Halloween to do, like a spooky Ravenloft adventure type thing. Um, I also, to do these types of games well, requires a lot of planning and a lot of thinking up mysteries and stuff, because it's a lot of the adventures that prompts that they give are based on mystery and intrigue. Um, that often requires mental gymnastics that I'm not capable of doing. So,
Mhm.
uh, but I mean, there's plenty of times when like you could do something spooky that's not, truly awful. Like you could make it so that it's like wrong. Um, Sort of
Yeah.
on the level that like we've encountered in games that we've played before. And
Yeah,
like
like that's
that
yeah.
fits. Um, you know, not Falkovnia. It is Lamortia. Lamortia is basically all Frankenstein stuff. So it's like irradiated monster. It's like Fallout meets Frankenstein meets Resident Evil,
Mhm.
basically. So that's one where you could do it a little like the
Doable.
horror would be there, but you could have it be a little more action oriented. Like
Yeah.
Resident Evil 8 proves that like it's kind of an action game, but there's still spooky, scary elements to it.
Mhm.
Uh,
But
so,
yeah, I don't
all
know.
right,
I think I'm definitely in a thinking at like a DM mode. Um, because I've been doing some reading. And what do you say we take that as a, segue into we can talk about Questlog?
um, yeah, I just want to talk about one more thing real quick.
Oh
So we
yeah.
did mention we looked at sort of the other domains that they talked about that they didn't really flesh
Mhm.
out. One of them, Sire 1313, the Morning Rail, and I was like, oh, that's Eberron. What does that mean? Ghost Train. That's what it is.
Okay.
It is. Uh, it's the Sire 1313, which is the name of the train, and it was dubbed the Morning Rail because it went through what would become the Mournlands, and it was supposed to be the last train out of Sire, and it got held up because some VIP wanted to get on the train, forced hundreds of people off, held the train back, and because they held the train back, didn't make it out in time and got caught in what you basically got caught in the bomb. Uh, and so because of that, the train is a domain of dread. That travel that chugs its way through other domains of dread. Um, and like the passengers don't know that they're dead, and they're all still horrified, trying to get away from the bomb. Uh, so yeah, but
Oh
Ghost
fun.
Train. This means that our dear friend Josh York could make some sort of martial arts character that could suplex the Sire 1313, uh, quite possibly as a way to as a campaign ending moment right there. Is the way to finally destroy that domain of dread's reign of terror. Is you suplex the ghost train. For those that don't know, that's a Final Fantasy VI joke. There is an enemy called the Ghost Train. It's like a ghost train, and there's a martial arts character that you can just suplex it, like a whole train. So, all right, yeah, let's transition from that into quest log.
Yeah. I'm gonna run it over
Quest log is where we talk about what sort of geeky stuff that we did over the past week and what sort of geeky stuff is on our to-do lists for the upcoming week.
though. Yeah.
How about I go
So
first?
I was gonna say, Sean, I
You
usually
look
go
like you
first,
need a
but why
moment.
don't you go first? Yeah.
All right. I made another TikTok video. This time it's talking about charm spells. Charm's not mind control. Get it right, folks. I'm kind of tired of seeing all sorts of like podcasts and shows and other games and stuff where you cast charm person and suddenly like you can control everything the person or the expectation that you are able to control everything the target does. That's not how it works. And that's why I think charm can get pretty grody uh, if it's not done well. But
Mhm.
it's not intended to be that way. It's literally intended to just be like, please don't attack me, or like to like make nice with you know the bandits and stuff so that they'll leave you alone. Uh, and
Mhm.
that's why it was intended to like for non-lethal clerics and stuff like that. Um, but too often I think people use it as mind control, and then it gets into very questionable ethical stuff. Um, the main distinction is charm does not remove agency from the NPC. Mind control does. So dominate does. You are actively controlling that. Things like
Mhm.
suggestion, command, stuff that is more like mind control than charm,
Mhm.
which is just the person regards you as a friendly acquaintance, right? So to
Can the
use the
cute
example,
girl at the bar get you to buy her a drink?
well, to use the example that I literally gave in the video is,
Mhm.
friendly acquaintance can ask me for $100. I'm not giving them $100. Like, so they can say no to even
Mhm.
mildly unreasonable requests, right? The example I was gonna give was like if your buddy is like working security at a military facility and you just show up, like the friendly acquaintance aspect might be that they don't shoot you on sight and ask you to leave.
Mhm.
So just remember, folks, if you charm somebody, like it'll make them friendly for a little while, but that doesn't mean they're gonna do everything that you say or what you ask. Also, they're gonna remember that you charmed them. So that's, you know,
It's the
in
big
the
one.
case of the friend spell, it makes them actively hostile afterward, as the drawback to that. So that's just something to keep in mind. Um, I have one section left for Kazdal. It's sort of like cultural beliefs, uh, and that's it. So almost done with that. And I did color a chapter 1 comic. So I've also been
Nice.
doing a lot more icons for the updated RPG Maker project,
Yeah.
and made a full listing of all the food that my wife helped me with. So that was fun. So
Yay.
so that's what I did. As far as stuff
Fun.
that I'm gonna do this week, I'm gonna make another TikTok video. I'm gonna do it, and I'm gonna finish that Kazdal section, and I'm gonna color another chapter 1 comic. Uh,
Hey, keep making
and
progress.
bonus goals are gonna be make more food icons.
Nice. Nice. Yeah, so I got through two more adventures in Candlekeep Mysteries.
2 thumbs up.
Yeah. I probably would have gotten through a third except for allergic reaction last night. Uh to some food that I did not know that I should not have eaten.
Yeah,
Um
yeah,
yeah.
yeah,
If you have a spice allergy, be mindful of, and ask when people cook things and then slather it in barbecue sauce because
yeah, yeah.
the bad
If you were
spice.
to ask Courtney if she spices, she does not spice.
No, I do not.
No.
But yeah, so I got through two chapters, so it was two out of my one was my goal. Um Also bringing back a few really old goals that I've had. I did get a bit further back in my Stardew game, on my Steam game, with making more progress towards getting all of the cooking ingredients that I need. Um, I've got about more than half. I just got to do a lot of fishing. Um, and I got another note, so I'm getting closer to getting the portraits. And I have another dinosaur hatching. Um,
Nice.
so I have Kalea and Kaleo,
Oh, very nice.
um, as my dinosaurs. Yep. Um, and Joe and I started our Stardew farm as well, as I said
Cool.
I wanted to do months and months ago.
Yeah.
So lots of Stardew, but
Nice.
but yeah, my goal is to continue cooking stuff. I'd like to just make progress on that. I've got the full spreadsheet made up of everything that I need. Um, Most of it I have to wait until the winter market to get the seeds that I need to be able to make the spring stuff. But um, and then yeah, and then keep plugging at these adventures. Get at least one red in the next week through Candlekeep. I'm really liking it. The more that I read, the more I'm like, oh, again, getting more ideas for DMing, getting more ideas for hooks, getting more ideas in general. So I'm really liking the way that it makes my mind think. um,
Nice.
but yeah, that's what I've been up to, and that is my goal for
Cool.
this next week.
All right then.
And of
Let's
course, I
not waste any
freeze
more time
again.
then. With oh with our ramblings. So we're gonna wrap up this episode. So thank you all for joining us for this episode of the 8-Bit Adventures podcast. You can find more content from 8-Bit Adventures at 8-bitadventures.com. If you like that content, which includes comics, podcasts, artwork, streams, and more, please consider becoming a patron at patreon.com/8bitadventures. Um, and thank you and shout out to all of our current and wonderful patrons, and past patrons too. Thank you for your support in the past. And finally, our opening theme is One Up by Professor Shy Guy. You can find his work over at professorshyguy.bandcamp.com. And there we go. There's the command popping up. So yeah, professorshyguy.bandcamp.com. And with that, we're done. So again, thank you for joining us. Hope you have a wonderful week. We'll be back Saturday 9 p.m. Eastern Time for Monster Hunter and Saga Frontier Remastered.
Yeah.
And as always, have fun, happy gaming, and enjoy your pie cake.
Bye, everybody.